So I'm going to do my little spiel, okay?
Sure.
I'm Heather Atwood with 1623 Studios, and I am talking this morning with Dr. Richard Safier, the Superintendent of Gloucester Schools. Hi, Dr. Safier. How are you this morning?
Good, thank you. Good morning to you.
Let's get right into it. I understand you've already had meetings with the city. Are there any updates this morning on the coronavirus?
Right, we have meetings with the health department, hospitals, and a whole host of numerous agencies throughout the city twice a week on Tuesday mornings at 7:30 and Friday mornings at 8:30. And what I heard first thing this morning is that in Essex County, I believe there are 7 diagnosed cases of the coronavirus, but there are none in Gloucester at this time.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I assume the rest of Cape Ann, Rockport, Essex, do we know?
That's correct. They don't necessarily identify where those cases might be, but I'm led to believe that they are not on Cape Ann.
And do we have a number from last week?
A little over a week ago, I think there was only 1 case in Essex County. Again, location unidentified, but also not in Gloucester.
Right. And your meeting that you held with the health and the director of the Department of Public Health and the mayor last week that I saw was upbeat. You guys are really taking charge of things. Do you feel like that's still the city is still feeling confident? And
I think yes. I think the city is doing everything that it possibly can at this point. We don't necessarily have adequate numbers of tests for coronavirus. We certainly don't have a vaccine. So the question becomes, what can we do and in order to stem the tide of transmission? That really is the big issue right now, and time is of the essence. With that said, I think the city has been incredibly sensitive, and I've complimented both the mayor and Karen Carroll, the director of health, for just how assertive and how aggressive they have been in coordinating, creating the incident command structure, helping us in order to make our decisions about school closings, about the closing of offices. I really feel that in a very strong way that they are doing their part, again, to try to find ways of minimizing the spread of this transmission.
so let's talk about the schools. What kind of remote learning do these children have? You have 4 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and a high school, right?
Actually, 5 elementary schools, and the preschool, I always ignore them, so we have to make sure we mention the preschool as well. And we had a series of, all day yesterday, we had a series of virtual faculty meetings at the elementaries, the middle schools, and the high schools. And so this is all remote. And what we are doing is working on putting together a host of resources, reading suggestions, recommendations. At the elementary level, they're working by grade level so that people from Beeman and East Gloucester, Plum Cove, Veterans, and West Parish are all going to get together. There's a Google Doc that they can work from, and they're going to collectively put together at each grade level particular stuff, if you will, for kids to work on and hopefully work on with their parents. At the middle school and the high school, they're doing it well. At the high school, definitely. They're doing it by subject area. We have department chairs, we call them program leaders, and they're also going to be spearheading the work remotely in order to come up with recommendations and suggestions. And a similar process going on at the middle school as well. All of these suggestions are going to be out and online probably Wednesday morning, tomorrow morning. So this gives our teachers a chance in this first round to put together some information, come to some consensus as to what they'd like to send out. What we cannot do is require work of students at this time. There are regulations and there are equity type issues. There may be some children who don't have access to the internet, and I'd like to remind me to say something about that. And there's also the issue of students with disabilities who require, close contact in terms of helping them to access the curriculum. Although our special education teachers will be working with our regular education teachers to make some suggestions, that still doesn't fill that particular gap. The guidance from the Department of Education is a little bit thin at this point. So for the next 3 weeks, since we are closed for 3 weeks, we are coming up with suggestions, recommendations, things that we really hope that children and their parents and guardians will take to heart and begin to work on at their pace. If a child wants to submit some of their materials to their teachers, we've asked the teachers themselves as well to provide some review. and send back some constructive feedback and criticism, but there'll be absolutely no grading or anything along those lines. These are recommendations, suggestions, which I hope that students will pick up on.
So along those lines, this may be a premature question, but I'm sure you've been considering how to manage children's transcripts, particularly the juniors and seniors,
Yeah.
their work requirements, they're in this big transition time.
Well, it is a little bit premature because there is so much, the immediacy of what we had to do just to get the schools closed and so on and so forth has really been on the forefront of our minds. But we don't yet know, for example, what MCAS is going to do. We don't know what the advanced placement people are going to do, and we certainly don't know what the SAT people are going to do. The seniors, more or less, they're already packed and ready and waiting for their responses from the schools that they can presumably attend online in September, given the current conditions. The juniors are the class in question at this point. And we're just going to have to wait and see and get some guidance from those various agencies.
So you were talking about all these resources being set up and you're working on all that right now. How about, and this may not necessarily be your territory, but just resources for parents who are home with all these children, how to manage this time. And
Right.
It will be really helpful to have some assignments and some interaction with their teachers, but just their moods, getting exercise, getting them away from screens. Do you have any resources for that?
Right. Well, we want to work with our social service personnel, our psychologists, our adjustment counselors. I think one of the next waves of information that we would like to distribute would be to how to help manage, on a daily basis over an extended, protracted period of time. How do folks manage? We don't want to intrude. But at the same time, in the same way that the health department and the school department has sent out information about hygiene and best practices and about issues of social distancing, once we settle into this closure piece, I think it would be helpful for us to be able to send out some information, some recommendations on how do we all cohabitate under these extended circumstances.
Yeah, particularly with small children with special needs. It's people aren't used to being home for this period of time together.
This is so difficult. If you're a single parent and you've got a child in second grade and another one in sixth grade, and you've got to go to work and you can't work remotely, and if you have a limited family to help out, this is an extraordinary situation. In which, why, quite frankly, my inclination was to try to not close schools because it's just so difficult for so many people. But between the concern in the community reaching critical mass, and based upon all that was coming out from the Department of Public Health and ultimately at the federal level, the closures became inevitable, absolutely inevitable. So we had to make that decision.
Right. So we're all learning, right?
Yeah.
How to do this. You did mention internet access and how there might be some issues there, and this is how we need to live right now. But some people don't have that. How are you exploring that?
I did send out a notice from Comcast, and they are willing to provide a 2-month free internet access. They would send the modems and the wiring and everything that a family would need. They would send it, and for 2 months it would be free of charge. Their regular program regarding this particular situation is that it would then cost $9.95 a month. And considering what you and I probably pay for internet access, and in recognition of the fact that, low-income families, it's very, very difficult to manage, I would hope that the $10 a month is something I'm sure they recognize as important, and hopefully it's something they can afford as well. We're really not in a position at this point to bring people into the buildings and to create packets and all that kind of stuff. It's just told to stay out, so we have to sort of do so. And again, when it comes to the resources, there's no expectation at this time of anything required, and it's in recognition of these kinds of inequities.
So would families directly reach out to Comcast? Is that what they should do?
They can. I gave them the link to do so, and they can. I also, in my message, said that they can contact me, and if necessary, I would put them in touch with the Information Technology Department. One person did contact me, and I had made arrangements to speak with her on Monday. And I had emailed, we were exchanging on Sunday. She then said she went in, was able to fill out the application, and that Comcast was going to comply. Yeah.
So is there anything else that you want the community to know about what's happening within the school system right now? Anything, any important messages?
I think the two important messages, one, and you alluded to it before, I would really ask parents in the most constructive way to become engaged in what we're recommending children to do, and to really help them. I was in the market basket, and there was a young man of high school age, and he was a cashier. He said, I don't mind snow days, but to be out of school this long is really, really tough. And it kind of got my heart when he said that. The other piece, another message that we sent out, is that if children are congregating outside of school and meeting and they're meeting in groups and the like, then this whole social distancing thing is not going to work. And this is an extremely difficult request to make. But if we're being told that we need to keep ourselves apart as much as possible, I'm hoping that children's behavior supported by the parents is going to complement what we've been in a position to have to do, which is to close schools.
Right, exactly. No, that's the hardest part, because usually when kids are out for a snow day, they can at least play with their friends.
And I don't blame them. But the circumstances now they're just different, unprecedented in our experience, in mine certainly.
Right. Okay, last question. Is there anything you want to update about the free lunch program at
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've been working with the Department of Ed, and the guidelines, A, are complicated, and B, they change from day to day. I'm going to be sending out a note after this meeting, in fact, indicating that we're going to be changing locations to Veterans and to Beeman effective tomorrow being Wednesday, the 18th. Originally, we were given the impression that because of the status of both Beeman and Vets, something called area eligibility, that would entitle us to have a separate independent location for the food distribution. And we had chosen O'Malley because we thought that would work best. Now we've received word that we do have to use the two schools' locations, again, Beeman and Vets. So that's fine. We can make that shift. But what is important, what remains, is the fact that any and all students from any school district that is closed, meaning Gloucester, Rockport, Manchester, they are welcome to come to either Beeman or to Veterans and receive a lunch between the hour of 11 and 12 o'clock. We're also talking with the Open Door, and because of their particular status with respect to certain grant programs, we may be able to open up other locations under their auspices. So I don't have the answer to that yet. We're talking with Open Door. They've been exceptionally cooperative, but we may have a couple of 3 other locations we may be able to open up by the end of the week as well.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. So we will try to, maybe you could send me the announcement also, and we can make sure it's posted on our 1623 page.
That would be great. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for all you're doing in these.
Thank you very much, and for helping to publicize what's going on as well. It's most helpful.
Yeah, we hope to talk to you again with updates.
Sure enough.
Okay, take care.
Bye now.